Next, we have this video, Let's Be Real about Japan, and I guess it's the history of the J-League, you told me, by Ped Talks Football.
The story of Japanese football is honestly one of the craziest transformations the sport has ever seen.
Picks up Kubo down the left again. Kubo goes himself, and that will do it for Japan.
A few decades ago, football in Japan was nowhere near the top of their sports culture. Baseball completely dominated. Sumo wrestling was deeply connected to tradition. I'd love to do this one day. And football was mostly seen as an amateur sport played by company workers. So Japan wasn't viewed as a serious football nation at all. Now, everything is different.
Nakamura across, and Kaoru Mitoma scores for Japan.
It's funny, yesterday I watched the Conan movie 16, which was about soccer basically.
Japan feels like one of the most dangerous teams outside of their traditional superpowers. The Blue Samurai now genuinely believe they can beat elite nations, and recent World Cups prove that confidence is not fake. They don't have a fake ego like someone like Garnacho. Wins over countries like Germany and Spain showed the world that Japan is no longer just a nice underdog story. What makes this moment feel even bigger is that it's the result of years of work in the making. Japan invested heavily into coaching, youth development, infrastructure, and sending players abroad to Europe. Now, the country is finally seeing the full results of that long-term vision. The current squad perfectly reflects the evolution of Japanese football. On one side, you still have veterans like Yuto Nagamoto. This guy's pushing 40, yet he's going to his 5th World Cup. He's basically the living connection between different generations. Like, I still remember using this guy's gold card in FIFA 12 Ultimate Team. That's how long it's been. Nagamoto experienced the era when Japan was still trying to prove it belonged at this level, alongside pioneers like Nakata and Kazuki Honda. Then you look at the younger stars and realize how different things are now. This generation grew up in a football culture where Japan regularly qualified for World Cups,
Just troll teenager named Gamacho who had a shit season with Chelsea,
and exported players to Europe's biggest leagues. Players like Kubo are starring in Spain. Ueda has become one of the most exciting forwards in the Netherlands. Mitoma was killing it in England at Brighton, and Minamino was cooking in France. These players are technically brilliant, but they are also physically stronger, more intelligent tactically, and have way more experience against elite competition than Japanese players from previous generations. They qualified for the 2026 World Cup faster than almost anybody else, becoming the first non-host nation to secure their spot, and they did it while dominating Asian qualifying in a way that made them look far ahead of the rest of the continent. Japan still has the speed, discipline, and technical quality they've always been known for, but now there's another layer to this team. Most of the squad has been tested in Europe against world-class oppositions every single week. Looking back at where Japanese football started, the rise feels unbelievable. Modern Japanese football is actually very young compared to most major football nations. The professional league, the J-League, wasn't even created until 1993. Before that, football in Japan was still mostly tied to company teams and amateur structure. The national team had very little relevance globally and was nowhere near the level of the world's biggest football countries. Then came one of the most painful moments in Japanese sports history, the tragedy of Doha. In 1993, Japan was seconds away from qualifying for its first ever World Cup. The dream was right there, but in the final moments against Iraq and Qatar, Japan conceded a heartbreaking late equalizer that crushed their qualification for the 1994 tournament. The players collapsed to the ground in tears, and the entire country was devastated. But strangely, that moment became the start of everything.
That's what you need. You need an anime backstory to motivate you. We lost, never again. I will train stronger, I will get better, and I will never lose again.
The pain of Doha created urgency inside Japanese football. The country realized it needed to completely change how it developed players, build infrastructure, and approach the sport. Because you know, Japan is actually a well-run country. That heartbreak became the fuel that pushed Japanese football into a new era. 5 years later, Japan reached their first ever World Cup at France in 1998. That team was placed into a brutal group with...
The year I was born and the year that France won the World Cup, which anytime I go anywhere and someone asks me what year I was born in France, if they're older, I guess, they'll definitely mention, oh, you were born the year we won the World Cup. People always tell me that, and I'm like, yeah. And I have never anything more to say because I don't watch soccer, right? So like, I don't even know any of the name of the people from the team back then or anything. It's one of those things, yeah. It's one of those things.
Argentina, Croatia, and Jamaica. Realistically, nobody expected Japan to compete, and I mean they didn't. They lost all 3 matches and finished near the bottom of the tournament standings. They were basically the international version of Tottenham, but the experience was still historic for the country. Just being there felt like a breakthrough. Then came a moment that Japanese fans will never forget. On June 26, 1998, striker Masashi Nakayama scored against Jamaica, becoming the first Japanese player to ever score a goal at the World Cup.
Nakayama, and Japan have the goal
Cool.
they crave.
Japan still lost the game 2-1, but back home, the celebrations were enormous because there was a feeling that they had finally reached the biggest stage of football. That tournament also introduced the world to Nakata, the player that many people still consider the first true global icon of Japanese football. At just 21 years old.
Do you watch other sports related to club clash each other? I only watch MMA and sumo, that's it. Those are the 2 that I watch, nothing else. I mean, maybe a bit of kickboxing or Muay Thai, but I don't really watch any kind of team sport, yeah. No, I don't.
Nakata played with confidence, creativity, and a personality that completely stood out on the international stage. With his dyed hair, technical brilliance, and fantastic vision with the ball, he became the face of a new football generation in Japan and opened the doors for future Japanese stars to move abroad and succeed in Europe. 4 years later, everything changed for Japanese football. The 2002 World Cup was held in East Asia, with Japan and South Korea co-hosting the tournament. For Japan, this was so much more than just a football event. It became a cultural explosion that pushed the sport into the center of the country's identity. Under French coach Philippe Trousier, Japan played with incredible discipline and organization. He was extremely demanding as a manager, and his team reflected that. Japan looked structured, aggressive, and mentally prepared in a way that the country had never seen before on the world stage. The tournament started with a dramatic 2-2 draw against Belgium, but the real breakthrough came a few days later. On the 9th of June 2002, Japan defeated Russia 1-0 in Yokohama to secure the nation's first ever World Cup win. Inamoto scored the winning goal and instantly became a national hero. The atmosphere inside the stadium was ridiculous. Fans across the country celebrated wildly because this felt like proof that Japan could finally compete at the highest level of world football. Japan then beat Tunisia 2-0 to finish at the top of the group and qualify for the round of 16 for the first time in its history. Football in Japan completely exploded after that moment. The national team suddenly became one of the biggest stories in the country, and the tournament inspired an entire generation of young players who would later help push Japan even further. Now, unfortunately, the dream eventually ended with a 1-0 loss to Turkey in the knockout stage, but by that point, the result almost felt secondary. The 2002 World Cup gave Japanese football belief, identity, and a foundation that would shape the future of the sport in the country for decades. By the time the 2006 World Cup rolled around, the expectations around the Japanese national team was higher than ever. The country believed it had finally gone a golden generation. Players like Nakata, Nakamura, and Shinji Ono were technically gifted, experienced, and respected around the world. On paper, this looked like the strongest Japanese team ever assembled. It was like their version of the Avengers. To lead them, Japan hired Brazilian legend Zico, one of the greatest attacking players in football history. Zico wanted Japan to play with creativity, freedom, and flair, instead of the strict, rigid structure that they had used before. Now yes, the idea sounded exciting, especially given how talented the group of players they had were. They were capable of playing beautiful football. But once the tournament started, everything went wrong. Japan's opening match against Australia became one of the most painful collapses in the country's football history. Japan led one.
It's definitely like, it sounds like a mistake, right? I mean, everybody knows like Japan is a very like rigid country that works a lot with the rules and within the rules. So why try to do the absolute opposite? Clearly there was good result with the last coach that made them like very rigidly follow the rules. I don't know.
1-0 for most of the game and looked in control heading into the final minutes. Then disaster struck. Australia suddenly scored 3 times after the 84th minute, turning a comfortable Japanese win into a shocking 3-1 defeat almost instantly.
And the ball's going in. Cahill, it's his day. Luisi, 3-1. Australia win it.
That loss completely damaged the team's confidence. Kind of like how my confidence gets shattered when I see these Asian baddies with the most mid-looking white dudes. Like seriously, what the hell is up with that?
Money. It's not confidence. It's money.
Japan.
And sometimes love, sure, sometimes.
Followed that with a 0-0 draw against Croatia. Yoshikatsu Kawaguchi became the hero after saving a penalty and keeping the team alive in the tournament. But the final group match against Brazil exposed all of Japan's weaknesses. Brazil dominated the game and crushed Japan 4-1, ending the campaign in humiliating fashion. After the tournament, Zico blamed the brutal heat and the early afternoon kickoff times in Germany, but most people felt the issues were due to tactical reasons. Japan had talent, but the team lacked defensive organization. They lacked structure and balance. Too much freedom on the pitch turned into chaos when the pressure increased. They looked like the international version of Real Madrid in that tournament. For many fans, 2006 remains one of the most disappointing World Cups in Japanese history because the expectations were so high and the collapse felt so sudden. The tournament also marked the emotional end of an era. Shortly after Japan's elimination, Nakata announced his retirement from football at only 29 years old. The face of modern Japanese football walked away from the game immediately after the country's biggest disappointment, closing the chapter on the generation that first introduced Japan to the world stage. After the disaster of 2006, Japan arrived at the 2010 World Cup in South Africa with far lower expectations. But instead of collapsing again, the team responded with one of the most memorable tournaments in the country's history. This was the World Cup where Kazuki Honda truly became the face of Japanese football. Nicknamed the Emperor because of his confidence and huge personality, Honda played with swagger and belief that perfectly matched the moment. Playing in a false nine role, he became the center of Japan's attack and immediately delivered in the opening match against Cameroon by scoring the winning goal in a massive 1-0 win.
Matsui's ball in, here's Honda! Japan have the lead!
That win completely changed the mood around the team. But the real masterpiece came in the final group match against Denmark. Japan produced one of the greatest set-piece performances in World Cup history. Take notes, Arsenal. This is how set pieces are supposed to look like, not like WrestleMania. Honda stepped up and smashed in an incredible swerving free kick from long range that left the goalie frozen.
They're trying to make sure he is offside. Sorensen has been beaten by the shot from distance.
Then Endo followed with another beautiful curling free kick of his own.
How about that?
Damn.
Yasuhito Endo this time.
Japan won the match 3-1 and advanced to the round of 16. The knockout game against Paraguay became a tense, exhausting battle. Neither team could break the deadlock during normal time or extra time, and the match eventually went to penalties. That's where the heartbreak came. Japan lost the shootout 5-3, beginning what would become a painful pattern of penalty heartbreaks for the national team in later tournaments. I don't know why these guys somehow suck at shootouts. The players were devastated, but despite the elimination, the 2010 squad changed the perception of Japanese football. For the first time, Japan truly looked capable of going into a World Cup away from home and beating strong teams under pressure. The team showed discipline, confidence, and quality, while Kazuki Honda emerged as a global star and one of the most iconic figures in Japanese football history. Heading into the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, the expectations around Japan were high again. The team looked incredibly talented on paper. Japanese players were now playing for massive European clubs like AC Milan, Manchester United, and Inter Milan. Shinji Kagawa was highly rated during this time. The belief was that Japan had finally reached another level, technically and individually. Their coach, Alberto Zaccheroni, wanted the team to play brave, attacking football with confidence on the ball. You know, the complete opposite of Chelsea. But once the tournament started, Japan looked tense and emotionally fragile. In the opening match against Ivory Coast, Japan took the lead and seemed in control, but everything quickly collapsed in the second half as Ivory Coast turned the game around to win 2-1. Then came a frustrating 0-0 draw against Greece. Keep in mind, in that match, Greece played much of the game with just 10 men. Japan struggled badly to break them down, and suddenly the team entered the final group game needing a huge result against Colombia just to survive. Instead, Colombia completely exposed them. James Rodriguez tore through Japan's defense as Colombia won 4-1, ending the tournament in a humiliating fashion for the Japanese. For many fans, the 2014 World Cup became a harsh lesson. Japan had technically gifted players at major European clubs, but the team lacked intensity, physicality, and a clinical striker capable of deciding matches under pressure. Then came one of the most heartbreaking matches in Japanese football history. The 2018 World Cup in Russia was an emotional roller coaster from the beginning to the end. Like, Japan had more ups and downs than your local hooker. They shocked the world in their opening match by beating Colombia 2-1.
Against Ospina and Japan. Ospina stays at home and it's in. Japan hit the front again.
becoming the first Asian country ever to defeat a South American team at a World Cup. That win gave the team huge confidence going into the knockout round, where they faced Belgium's Golden Generation squad. But nobody, and I mean nobody, could have predicted what happened next. Japan played fearlessly and took a shocking 2-0 lead through goals from Haraguchi and Takashi Inui.
It's a great chance for Haraguchi. He scores.
It's in.
Will eventually come in. 2-0. Takashi Inui.
For a moment, it genuinely looked like Japan was about to produce one of the greatest upsets in World Cup history. But Belgium fought back and equalized to make it 2-2. Then came the moment that still haunts Japanese football. In the final seconds of the game, Japan won a corner kick. Instead of slowing the game down and preparing for extra time, playing the haram football that Arsenal would have, these guys pushed forward trying to win the match immediately. Well, Belgium's goalkeeper Courtois caught the ball cleanly, launched a rapid counterattack, and just 14 seconds later, Nasser Chadli scored the winning goal at the other end.
Look up, and here's a winner! Oh, can you believe it?
The speed and brutality of the collapse shocked the whole country. That counterattack became so famous in Japan that reportedly there were documentaries that were made later trying to analyze every second of what went wrong. All they had to do was just waste some time, and they could have avoided this. I would suggest learning from Mikel Arteta, aka football's Bin Laden. Even though the defeat was heartbreaking, the performance also showed.
What the fuck does that even mean? Like, obviously I have no context, but like, what does that even mean when you compare someone to Bin Laden? What?
How close Japan was to reaching the world's elite level. Then came the World Cup in Qatar in 2022. Japan was placed into what looked like an impossible group with Germany and Spain, two former world champions. Most people expected Japan to finish either third or at the bottom of the group. Instead, these guys stunned the entire footballing world. Against Germany, Japan went behind 1-0 early, but Hajime Moriyasu made some brilliant substitutions in the second half. Ritsu Doan and Takuma Asano came off the bench and completely changed the game as Japan came back to win 2-1.
Okay.
It is an equaliser for Japan. Lovely touch there from Asano. The shock is now very much.
It was such a tight goal.
Finally, Japan was on the other side of a comeback. Then
L'État replaced the forbidden tactic, in Arabic language, despite it technically doesn't violate the rules. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. It's like, it's legal under rules, but the fans see it as like, like low-level tactics or something. Okay.
they did it again, this time against Spain. Japan once again fell behind 1-0 before Moriyasu's tactical changes transformed the match. Doan scored again.
Enough for Germany at the moment, but here comes Japan. Oh, yes!
Clean.
What an impact for Ritsu Doan!
Tanaka added another.
Into the danger area. Oh, it's in!
Nice.
Remarkable!
And Japan beat Spain 2-1 to finish at the top of the group ahead of both European giants. The world suddenly looked at Japan differently after those performances. They were no longer just a disciplined underdog team. They looked tactically intelligent, fearless, and finally capable of beating big nations under pressure. But then the familiar heartbreak returned in the round of 16. For some reason, these guys can just never get past this stage. Japan faced Croatia and battled through another tense match.
I assume it's not that weird, right? Like, considering the World Cup is something that happens every 4 years, and I assume there's like most countries in the world in it. I assume majority of countries, not just Japan, have never won it, right? Like, this story is probably the same stories for like many other countries who just never made it. I assume.
That eventually went to penalties, and as we have seen, pens are Japan's kryptonite. So once again, the shootout ended in pain as Croatia eliminated them. Even though they didn't reach the quarterfinals, Qatar 2022 changed Japan's global reputation. The Blue Samurai left the tournament with the respect of the football world and the growing belief that they might finally be ready to break through at the next World Cup. Heading into the 2026 World Cup, this Japan team is chasing something much bigger than just surviving the group stage. For the first time in the country's country's history, the expectation around them is to finally reach the quarterfinals and break through the barrier that has stopped them so many times before. What makes this Japan team so dangerous is their flexibility. Under Hajime Moriyasu, Japan has developed into a side that can completely change styles depending on the opponent. Sometimes they dominate possession with quick passing and movement. Other times they sit deep, absorb pressure, and explode forward on the counter. That tactical flexibility has made them one of the most unpredictable teams that we have seen in international football. At the center of this new era is Ayase Ueda. For years, one of the biggest criticisms of Japan was the lack of a true elite striker. The team often created chances, but lacked a ruthless finisher capable of
They just haven't got Shinichi. They just need Shinichi.
consistently deciding games. Ueda has started changing that conversation completely. The Feyenoord striker has become one of the most feared Japanese forwards in years. During World Cup qualifying, he finished as Japan's top goal scorer and carried that incredible form into the 2026 cycle. He was killing it for Feyenoord. He plays like a classic number 9. He wants to attack crosses, fight with the center backs physically, and then finish the moves inside the box. He's strong in the air, very aggressive off the ball, and far more direct than many previous Japanese forwards. His time in Europe has helped him sharpen his finishing, and now he's become the exact type of number 9 that Japan had been missing for years. Then there's Kubo, the player that many fans see as the true superstar of this generation, the Japanese Messi. If Ueda is the finisher, Kubo is the creator. Once a part of Barcelona's academy as a child, Kubo has grown into one of the best attacking players in La Liga with Real Sociedad. He's still a young guy, only entering his prime years now, and playing with incredible confidence. After all, his club did lift the Copa del Rey. Kubo's biggest weapon is his intelligence. No, that's not a stereotype because he's Asian. He's just a very smart footballer. Technically on the ball, he's brilliant, especially on that left foot. But what separates him from others is the way he reads the game. He constantly finds small spaces between the defenders and has the capability to create moments out of nothing. For Japan, he is the player they look towards when they're playing against a low block or they're playing against a team that is parking the bus and they need that moment of brilliance. Behind them, Endo gives the entire team balance and leadership. Playing for Liverpool, Endo has become one of the most respected defensive midfielders Japan has ever produced. He's the Japanese N'Golo Kante. He does all the dirty work that allows Japan's attacking players to shine. He wins tackles, covers space well, relentlessly presses the opposition, and protects the back line with so much intensity. But Endo's impact goes beyond tactics. He is the emotional leader of this team. Every great national side needs a player willing to sacrifice everything for the group, and Endo represents that mentality perfectly. One of the most exciting names in the squad is Suzuki. And no, I'm not saying that because it's the name of the car, I'm just talking about him as a player. Born in New Jersey and now developing in Italy, Suzuki represents the modern evolution of Japanese goalkeepers. He's tall, athletic, confident with the ball at his feet, and far more physically dominant than many goalkeepers that Japan have produced in previous generations. And then there's Nagamoto, who is still going strong at 39 years old. Maybe if he showed his abs on Instagram, people would talk about his longevity more, because apparently that's what it takes to get people talking about you. Even if he no longer starts every match, his presence inside the squad is incredibly important. This will be his 5th World Cup, something no Japanese player has ever achieved before. Japanese football has come a long way since the heartbreak of the tragedy of Doha in 1993. What started as a painful failure became the spark that completely transformed the sport in the country. Over the last 3 decades, Japan built a professional league, invested heavily in youth development, sent players to Europe, and slowly created a football culture capable of competing with the world's elite. Now, a team standing in their way is the Netherlands. To see just how good the Dutch are, you have to check out this video right here.
Well, very, very interesting. I mean, I love stories like this. You know, this is how you get into sports, right? Like, a story like this. You know, I've never actually watched, I said before, but I don't think I've ever watched a soccer match. I've played a few in, you know, real life. I've played like FIFA or PSG game from like, you know, late 2000s PS3. But, you know, I've never watched one, like an actual game, even though I'm sure I would enjoy it. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, right? It's pretty fun and straightforward to watch. So maybe I should watch the World Cup 2026, rooting for Japan, because I guess I know their story. Maybe. We'll see. Like, frankly, I won't even hear about it if no one tells me about it, because, since again, I don't really follow stuff like soccer, I don't even know if I would hear about it. But yeah. Cool story. I really like stories like this. I mean, obviously, waiting for the payoff, right? Them winning, which might not happen in 26, but yeah, maybe eventually. Maybe eventually. Great deal.